I'd like to call to order this meeting of the special meeting of the Urbana City Council for Monday, March 16th, 2020. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Council members Brown.
Here.
Colebrook.
Here.
Hersey.
Here.
Jacobson.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
Roberts. Wu.
Here.
Mayor Marlin.
Here. Next item is public input. In the interest of sanitation, we have not put cards out and back, but does anyone wish to address the Urbana City Council? Wayne, please come forward. Just please state your name very clearly for the record.
Hi, my name is Wayne Williams. I am the Cunningham Township Assessor, and I am just coming to announce that I have closed my office to the public. 85% of our walk-ins are seniors, which are one of the more vulnerable populations. I just want to remind everyone, all our seniors, that the deadline for returning the 2020 senior exemption form and the senior freeze form is December 31st. 2020. You can also mail those forms to the Champaign County Assessor. The address is 1776 East Washington in Urbana 61802. Cunningham Township Assessor employees will still be able to answer requests for property record cards by email, by phone, and our brand new website, www.ctao.us. Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. Just for the viewing audience, I want to let you know that our city clerk is to your left, city staff is to the right, city council members are spaced out along the dais, and we have 2 council members who will be attending electronically, and our audience is social distanced at about 3 to 4 feet from each other or more. So we are trying to conduct this meeting in a way that protects people's health to the greatest extent possible. Okay, we have one item of, is Dennis on yet?
Yes, I'm here.
Great, welcome Dennis.
Yes, thanks.
We have one item of business on the agenda, and that is ordinance number 2020-03-015, which is a temporary emergency ordinance to address the COVID-19 virus pandemic. I'll introduce this. Jim Simon, City Attorney, is available to answer questions, and then we'll have discussion.
I have a request of Dennis. Dennis, you're sharing your screen, which is filling up my entire screen. So can you turn off your screen?
I'll try to unshare it. Being new to this program, we'll see what happens.
Yeah. I think you could do it without disconnecting yourself.
Okay. Because my screen has been closed.
Ah. Okay, well, all right, well, any case, okay, let's let it go for now. Let's let it go for now. Oh, yes, yay! Are you still there, Dennis?
I'm still here, yes.
Okay.
Okay, and the screen is, thank you.
It is a new world.
New world.
We're all good to go?
Yeah.
Great, thank you. And I think we're using Zoom, is that correct?
Correct.
Great, okay. So, with yesterday's confirmation of Champaign County's first COVID-19 case and the news that there are 50 pending tests, we've entered a new phase of the deadly pandemic. The City of Urbana staff and I have been working very hard to plan and respond to this unprecedented crisis over the past few weeks. I want to let you know we're using the National Incident Management System, NIMS, that many of us were trained on by the Illinois Fire Service Institute. NIMS provides the framework and focus for our efforts, and that's particularly important when you have a million things coming at you every day, and this framework and system really helps you focus and stay focused on your top priorities. So a number of people over the years in the cities have taken this training. It's a 40-week course, and it's coming in very useful. The City of Urbana has the following objectives. We will strongly support and cooperate in community efforts to slow the spread of the disease, protect the health of the community and our employees, and avoid overwhelming the healthcare system. We will maintain essential city functions and services for the continuity of operations. We will also provide consistent communication with employees and the public, and we're documenting all expenses related to the pandemic response. One of the most important duties I have as your mayor is to issue a declaration of emergency, just as Governor Pritzker has done and many other mayors across the country. This declaration vests the mayor with some emergency powers and additional flexibility to face head-on the many different challenges that we'll confront throughout the course of this pandemic. Now, ordinarily, you'd turn to your city code and find the provisions for issuing the declaration of emergency and take it from there. Unfortunately, this section of our city code is very outdated. It would have taken too long to try to rewrite it, and we'd have to tie ourselves into a knot trying to adapt it to this situation. So instead, we drafted a standalone temporary ordinance and temporary emergency declaration specific to this situation. Once we're through this emergency, I expect we'll be rewriting Section 6 so that future councils have it for their use. Hopefully, they will never have to use it again. Urbana's temporary emergency ordinance provides for us to conduct city council meetings electronically, cancel events if needed, and activities which could promote the spread of the disease, make purchases faster while still following all purchasing guidelines, temporarily perhaps adapt personnel policies that will keep people safe and the city functioning. This declaration of emergency also is required in order for us to be reimbursed for expenses related to our response efforts to COVID-19. Other topics in the ordinance include management of city facilities, extending time to pay fines, or making payments to the city. It provides for a succession plan in my absence, and it provides for other general powers that may be necessary for protecting public health and safety during this crisis. The legal term used in the ordinance is, quote, police powers, but in this case it means general governmental powers. Now, if I knew exactly what powers we'll need and when, we would have listed them individually in the ordinance. But unfortunately, we don't know. What we do know is this: things are going to get worse, things will happen very fast, and the actions our community takes over the next few months will impact our lives for the rest of our lives. So today and going forward, we will need the ability to respond to changing circumstances and make decisions quickly. The general powers in the declaration of emergency will help us do that. The council, the city council, and I take this responsibility very seriously, and we seriously respect the authority that entrusts with us. And I also personally make the same promise to the City Council and the people of Urbana that I made when I ran for City Council and when I ran for mayor, and that is this: I will work as hard as I can to the best of my ability for the good of this community. Together, we'll move forward. Thank you. Are there questions for Jim Simon? Mary Alice.
Oh,
If I remember correctly, the Code 6 pretty much talks about curfew, and I'm wondering if that is included in this emergency order.
There are actually two articles to Chapter 6 in our code. Article 1 is, as you correctly note, relates to curfews. Article 2 relates to natural and man-made disasters, and that's where we had hoped to try to invoke for this coronavirus situation, and hammering that situation out to fit this wouldn't work. The way this ordinance is drafted, it is temporarily a blanket replacement or stands alone, separate from Chapter 6. I think one of the very first statement says, Section 2, the mayor shall be and hereby is vested with power and authority provided in this temporary emergency ordinance, notwithstanding anything to the contrary provided in Urbana City Code Chapter 6, Article 2. So it only relates to Article 2. The curfew powers, as described in Article 1, still applies.
Thank you.
Other questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
So this document specifies that meetings of the city council may be done electronically. Now, the governor now has issued a new order that all meetings subject to Open Meetings Act can be done electronically. And so I would assume, but I just want to ask, whether this also pertains to boards and commissions. May they now be held electronically without violating the Open Meetings Act?
Yes, they may be, because a public body is defined in the Open Meetings Act as not only the city council, but its boards and commissions, or boards and commissions of the city. So yes, you are correct. The suspension of the Open Meetings Act requirement of physical presence, as provided in Section 6 of today's executive order by Governor Pritzker, would apply to our boards, commissions, task force, what have you.
And we'll be looking at all our board and commission meetings, and of course, only the ones that are absolutely essential to city functioning for the next few weeks will be held. The rest will be canceled, I expect. And this points up how fast things are changing and how fast things have changed between when this ordinance was written last Friday and today, and the governor is actually anticipating a lot of the things that we were looking at as well. So we're going to be seeing much more coming from the governor's office as well over the coming days.
So I've got a question.
Yes, Dennis.
In the temporary ordinance under Section 4 of City Council meetings, during this period of emergency, council rules are hereby modified to require an affirmative vote of the majority of a quorum present, electronically or physically, at the meeting for the passage. So what we're saying is that we don't have to have a physical quorum present, but we can do one electronically and physically.
It used to be you had to have a physical quorum physically present, but the governor's order now overrides that. So we can all call in and not have to be physically present.
I see. Okay.
Well, I guess I would point out that the president now has said is discouraging, I guess it's not a law, but it's discouraging any gathering of more than 10 people. And if we have 7 members of the city council, plus the mayor is 8, plus the clerk is 9, plus council is 10, plus the city administrator is 11. So it sounds as though we should simply go to electronic meetings.
That's a logical conclusion. Mary Alice.
So I realize that things are changing daily, if not hourly, and everything hasn't been figured out, but I would like to know if you have any thoughts in terms of the plans to make these meetings available to the public. Will they be audio? Will they be video? Will they be a combination of both, or is that still under discussion?
It's under discussion. If we are all attending electronically, there won't be video, really, so it looks like there will be an audio. There has to be an audio recording. So, no.
If you're using Zoom, you can record it. It can be recorded as a video.
Oh, okay.
The governor's Section 6 of today's executive order does strongly encourage, if possible, video. Obviously, electronic can't be done that way, but also audio. So I'm sure an audio recording will be made and made available within a reasonable period of time after the meeting.
And we'll do our best with video. We just haven't.
Yeah, I would point out, although we're not utilizing it right now, Zoom does have video capability, so that it has the capability so that whoever is speaking video would become available, and then anybody, like on the council, who wants to speak can raise their hand, and then the video would shift to them. That doesn't seem to be activated in this session, but that is part of Zoom.
Well, I think we're going to get some practice with Zoom. Sharice and then Bill.
The main question that I had with when reading this, I left all my notes and stuff at home, but there's something in here that talks about what a bona fide, here it is, all such meetings shall be deemed in response to an event constituting a bona fide emergency under Section 2 of the Open Meetings Act. Well, and I guess what I was wondering is what the definition of bona fide emergency is.
It's not easily defined. It's a case-by-case circumstance. In fact, Section 2.02A of the Open Meetings Act doesn't contain a reference to bona fide emergencies. It talks about notices of emergency meeting, period. A bona fide emergency would be a reasonable person could characterize as an emergency. As the governor issues more executive orders, including the ones that have been issued, and following the president's guidelines of no more than 10 gathering in a public place together, I think, given the COVID-19 situation, that what we are involved with right now at this moment, both here at the council as well as throughout the city and the country, would be considered truly a bona fide emergency.
Okay. I didn't know if, when I was reading the code, so much of it just deals with a possible nuclear attack or possible this, that, and thus, and nothing talks about biochemical or biologic situation or event that may occur. So that's why I was wondering, because of the fact that it seems so narrow in what it says. It's like, so what is bona fide?
It dates back to the Cold War and actually at the state level too, which is why the language at this, everything needs to be updated.
Yes, okay.
And that's why after a day of working on trying to shoehorn something into Article 2 of Chapter 6, frankly, I gave up on it and realized it's just not going to work. And with the mayor and the city administrator's help, we crafted this provision as a standalone provision.
And I would emphasize that this ordinance applies only to the situation we're in now. So it's a temporary ordinance specific to this situation. Bill?
Yeah, I'd be very disappointed if we didn't meet physically. At least somebody be here. And part of that is because, I meet electronically on Zoom several times a week for work. It works fine. We have a small group or a large group. I meet with one group that's over 50 sometimes, and it actually works pretty well. But we have an obligation to the public to be open, and especially in tense situations, we need to show transparency, we need to show clear objectives, and I would be very disappointed if it wasn't open so that anybody could come in and participate in the meeting. They wouldn't have to have a computer, wouldn't have to have a special cell phone, wouldn't have to set up software. So I'd be very disappointed if we didn't have a physical presence. And I'll just say, as far as the public health aspect, that's a recommendation of 10. I understand how that's calculated, but with the safeguards we have in place here, I think you have to take into consideration the social distancing that we're doing, and it's proven to be successful, proven to be effective. So I would be disappointed not to have a physical presence.
Bill?
I guess I've got a statement and a question. So my statement is, you had mentioned that the situation that we're in with the pending pandemic, is unknown, what the future holds. And I think we could all probably agree that 2 weeks ago, nobody knew that the NBA season was going to be suspended, or that Major League Baseball was going to be suspended, or all the things, the big things in life that we enjoy are now put on hold. And this is bigger than what any of us thought, probably a month ago, 2 months ago. And I guess my question is, with this ordinance, you're just asking to strip away some of the typical restrictions that are placed on government, the protections, in order to specifically deal with this one situation only, in order to basically serve the citizens of Urbana better by being able to do some of the provisions that you have put in here, whether it be human resources or purchasing, or, the Meetings Act. Is that correct?
Well, I wouldn't even say strip away, because the basic protections we have in our with human resources personnel, with the financial system, they will still be there. It just makes it a little more flexible. It gives us a little more flexibility.
Thank you, Ben.
Jared?
Just one clarification, Jim, because this is part of an amendment we're going to offer later to this ordinance. We were going with consideration that the bona fide emergency is going to, I'm not sure exactly how declaring it affects the OMA, and without knowing for sure, I am offering something in my amendment that has to do with notice, and it is my understanding that in declaring that some of the rules, I'm not sure if it's all of them or if there is another section of the OMA that deals with the bona fide emergency situation, but my question to you is, how is notice affected when we declare a bona fide emergency as far as the OMA is concerned? Because it's my understanding that we do not have to follow the same rules because it is a bona fide emergency, and that's the whole point of declaring it. Can you comment on that?
Yes, actually, it's interesting because under public meeting in the Open Meetings Act, which is Section 2, they do not talk about, the statute in that section does not talk about emergencies. However, in 2.02 deals with notices of meetings. And towards the end of Section A, there is an indication of notice of an emergency meeting shall be given as soon as practicable, but in any event prior to holding of such meeting, to any news medium which has filed an annual request for notice under subsection B of this section. I assume all our news media, I think our city clerk could answer that, but all our news, and he's nodding his head, have filed such a request. So before we could hold a meeting, at least the public media must be notified. Obviously, we also, if we're going to notify media, I can't believe we'd have a problem not posting it on our website. So it would be posted on the website. The standard problem that they're really thinking of is or trying to address with this exception, is the 48-hour rule, where a notice has to be posted 48 hours. In fact, this meeting, we met that. For this meeting, we met that. Normally, that would allow us to post up to 6:59 p.m. on a Saturday to make the, 48 hours, because it's not weekdays or business days, but calendar days. So it's really addressed through the notice.
Okay. I think that from what I'm hearing, there is no specific condition under the bona fide emergency. It's just what you listed. There are not a timing constraint, but a notification as far as media sources are concerned prior to the meeting.
If I understand your question right, well, let me first start with bona fide emergency. We put in the word bona fide rather than just sticking with the language of the Open Meetings Act of just an emergency. What I meant when I inserted that in there was that when there is to be an emergency meeting, some kind of a statement, a one-sentence statement indicating, why it's such an emergency to call the meeting with less than 48 hours notice. But we still, before we can have the meeting, we must give some kind of notice.
Sure.
And I assume we can give electronic notice to the media that's requested, the annual request by the media for such notice. So a notice could go out, let's say in the morning, we're having a meeting that night. I think your meeting that night would be valid.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Is there a motion?
I don't have the list in front of me, but I'll make a motion that we approve the emergency ordinance. I don't know if somebody has the exact ordinance number. I'd like to read it into the record.
Is there a second? The ordinance number is 2020-03-015.
I'll second it.
Moved by Jared, seconded by Bill C. Any discussion? Bill B.
Yeah, I think this is appropriate under the circumstances. I think, we're in the middle of early stages of we don't really know what yet because we just don't have enough information. We're kind of in the fog of war, I think. We don't have enough good data, good clean data to analyze the people are trying to extrapolate things and base things on a variety of different assumptions and coming up with wide ranges of, how long it's going to last, how bad it's going to be. So I think we just need to, everybody needs to kind of chill for a couple weeks, and and I think we're learning more every day. I work with people that work on this every day, epidemiologists, pathobiologists. I'm very impressed with them. I don't do it myself, but I get to go to their noon seminars and get a free lunch, and I am so impressed with the quality of research on this campus, and I'm sure that it's the same all over. People are working on this very hard. So I'm sure and there have been good papers published online in pre-press where you get to comment on them, you get to read them, and people are learning stuff every day. There are therapeutics that can be used in the late stages, but there's a problem getting enough of everything. So, and I don't know what I'm talking about, so don't quote me on that. But I absorb things. But anyway, I'm just really impressed with the work that's going on, and I think we need to be patient. There's still a lot to learn, and we need to let the science catch up. I'm also real impressed with the neighborhood groups that have put together efforts to help other neighbors and be prepared to help other neighbors, and suggestions about what to do with your kids. People also need to understand the city is very busy. They're putting together a lot of plans right now. They will be busy for quite a while. We never had extra staff to begin with. So some of these things are best done by neighborhood groups. The best suggestion I saw so far was somebody said, just, here's a template for a letter. Take it around to your neighbors on your block and tell them you're available to, go grocery shopping or something. It's just going to be a block by block helping your neighbors sort of thing for a while. And we just need to kind of get through the first few weeks, see what we learn. I'm also real impressed with everybody's in town, how much they've learned. I don't know if that's because of the social media or the internet access, but hearing people use terms correctly, like flatten the curve and R naught. How many people knew what R naught was 3 weeks ago? Social distancing, things like that. So I'm really encouraged by people's response. For the most part, there's the hoarding and who knows what, but people do get scared, and I think it's our responsibility to make sure that we're open about everything, and we're going to get through this together. So I will support this.
I would like to make a suggestion on item 13, and it's an addition of a second paragraph that might read, any order undertaken by this article will require notice to be given to the City Council prior to or at the time of action being taken, and for the action to remain in force, it must be ratified by majority vote of the City Council at its subsequent Monday meeting. And I hope you understand, this is not offered in any, sense of doubting the wisdom of the actions that will be taken, but it is to maintain the role of the City Council in advising and consenting to the mayor's action.
Jared?
Eric, if I might, I don't know if it was circulated to you prior to the meeting, but I did have some extended language that we had drafted for it, and I think if you wouldn't mind that I read it, and perhaps you can we can offer it together in motion or in second, and
okay.
the spirit shall be there. I think we're all essentially on the same page. But here, let me read what I've got in front of us. This should have been distributed via email to you. Each of us has a copy of it, including the mayor and the city clerk here in front of us. So it reads in section 13 under other emergency powers, after the initial sentence, it would read, any order undertaken by this article will require notice to be given to the City Council prior to or at the time of any action being taken. The City Council shall have the authority by majority vote to suspend or amend any action taken under this article within 48 hours of notice being given of any such action. A special meeting to vote on any action taken under the powers vested in this article shall only require a declaration by 4 City Council members to the City Clerk of the intention of the Council to hold a vote. A special meeting will be noticed and scheduled as soon as is reasonably possible once notice has been given to the City Clerk. I offer that to you in spirit for your second. I know we probably have a discussion that needs to be held about how quickly we would hold the vote after notice was given, but if you would be open to it, I would either be happy to second your motion, or if you would be happy to second mine, however you see fit to move forward.
Well, let's discuss it a bit and see what our colleague's sense is. I'll just say why I did have your wording in hand. I didn't have a chance to get back to you with this alternative suggestion, but the reason that I'm and of course the first sentences are identical. It's just the second. It's just after that first sentence that there's a difference. And what I'm proposing is really that the following City Council action be routine, that it does not require the council to say, "Oh my gosh, we want to we want to call this into question," but it would be routine in the sense that any of the mayor's or the staff's proposals, even in non-emergency case, are routine. We automatically consider at a regular meeting, but the difference is that in the emergency, the mayor may take action and put things in force without waiting for the council. But this says, okay, that's fine. We agree with that, but let's have the council now review that at a subsequent Monday meeting and decide if we really agree with that. So that's the spirit of mine, as opposed to having a special procedure and a special meeting being called or not for the mayor's emergency action.
Well, I guess before either of us would offer an official amendment, then we can just discuss this item.
Right.
So I hear what you're saying. We'll just have it as a regular item. We will discuss it no matter what happens at the next meeting. That's generally the spirit, rather than either we will or we won't. We have to make a declaration to do so if we so choose so.
Right.
Is that what I understand?
That's exactly right. I want to make it a more routine action, as opposed to taking special action to question what the mayor did.
Okay.
So I have a question about that then. Would the stipulation that the city council, 4 members of the city council become proactive to request that review, but apparently this is what I think, Jared, you were asking for, that there would be 4 people who would contact the city council or the mayor from the city council to request that this be voted upon. And then Eric's comment would be that we would review these actions as a regular form of business at our next meeting. Is that the definition of the difference between the two proposals?
That sounds correct to me, Dennis.
Yeah, me too.
Ours would, the wording that I have would require council to give notice of intention to review.
Yeah.
Eric's would review by default.
Yeah,
Eric,
okay.
Eric, can you clarify, would your review include the option to amend or suspend?
Yeah, the council could take such actions, sure.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
And, you know, again, please, all that I'm trying to do here is retain, even though it's an emergency, the ordinary balance of powers that we have between the mayor and the council.
Okay. Mary Alice?
So I'm wondering if we can combine these so that the intent is that it will always appear on the city council agenda at the next scheduled meeting, but if you have 4 council members who feel that it needs to come to a meeting beforehand, within 48 hours, we have the ability to do that. So it's just a combination of that.
That was going to be my suggestion, Eric, that we would include both languages, yours as the primary, and then mine as an or. So
Sure.
it could be
No,
by default, or we would be able to call it prior to that meeting, should we deem it necessary.
I have no objection to that.
Okay.
And I would appreciate the fact that there wouldn't have to be a special meeting called because those take staff time and effort, and that's in precious quantity when we're now.
In an emergency, for example.
In
yeah.
an emergency, that's in short quantity. Does the clerk have enough information? No.
So,
Okay.
Charlie, I think I can sum up.
I need actual wording because we're going to put this,
And
we're gonna
Eric-
finish writing this tonight.
Sure. Eric, you have your language, which would have been probably the third paragraph or the third section after, or I guess it would have been the second one, correct? But it
the
also
second-
includes some of the language that I have in that one.
So here's what I propose to do. I will email to Charlie right now my wording to constitute the second paragraph.
Technology.
And then you can actually walk across the room and deliver to Charlie or email to him your wording for the third paragraph.
Okay. Let us know when you've got it underway to Charlie.
So to summarize, for the viewing public, the special action taken by the mayor would be done, but the council would automatically review it at the next regular council or committee of the whole meeting,
Or have the option to call a special meeting
or have the option to call a special meeting
to review it,
with 4 council members.
calling for the meeting.
Bill?
I've got a question, I guess, as the practical application of this. I mean, I obviously appreciate, council oversight, over actions, but just a what if we put something like this in place, and I just would like somebody, to explain to me, I guess, the fallout, when it comes to like purchases. Let's say, for instance, the mayor, and staffers think that we need to buy X amount of PPE, and we need it right now, and we as a city expend funds in that emergency based on the new ordinance, and then we gather as a council, and collectively we decide no, that wasn't a good idea. Then what happens with that purchase?
Bill, I think what we're talking about is an amendment specific to Section 13. So this would have to be an action undertaken specifically with powers vested in Section 13. A PPE purchase or purchases in general would be covered under Section 7 of this ordinance, so this would not apply in that situation. We would not be we're not seeking to check every power in the ordinance, just the other emergency powers. So this amendment only applies to actions taken under that, not under any other section. Does that make sense?
Well, it does, but I guess I don't understand what the other powers that you would be concerned about.
Did you have a chance to review the memo provided in the press review?
I did.
With what this does allow us to do and what it doesn't allow us to do?
I did.
Okay. In section, and we were going to get into this, I think we were going to ask Jim to elaborate a little bit on what exactly that meant. You know, this was brought up primarily as a response to let the public know that we saw what happened in the city of Champaign with their Exhibit A in Section 10 of the ordinance they passed. It was very similar to this. And we wanted to make it perfectly clear to everyone in the city of Urbana that the city council saw a flaw in that resolution and saw a flaw in that ordinance that we did not want folks to think we were choosing to repeat, that we take very seriously those powers that are given to the mayor and we don't list a specific thing as that Exhibit A did, where we're saying these are all the things that the mayor has the power to do, so we probably need a little bit of clarification from the city attorney as to what those things are. But without getting into the specifics of what they do and do not allow, we felt that it would be necessary to show the viewing public that we have a direct check on those powers that were of such concern to folks in the city of Champaign when that ordinance was passed. And that's the spirit of it. We weren't thinking necessarily of what it does and what it doesn't do because we have a power to check it. But we would appreciate elaboration, Jim.
Jim?
I think I'm happy to give you one. If you read it, it talks about general police powers to protect public health and safety within the city. Police powers is not a reference to police department powers. Very simply and hopefully succinctly, it's a reference to enforcing ordinances or state law. It can be by the fire department in terms of occupancy levels. It could be CD in terms of special event permits. It could be the local liquor commissioner in terms of liquor licenses. It could be the police department. But it has to be directed towards public health and safety, not specifically directed at, let's say, guns. I mean, mayor does not have the power to in any way control guns. One, we don't license guns. The state licenses with FOID cards and concealed carry cards, that kind of thing. The problem is, as both of you have articulated, we don't know what is coming down the pipe. It could be suddenly mass riots over at Schnucks over a box of diapers. It could be food shortages where maybe the mayor decides to issue an order with a little bit of rationing so the existing food supply that's present at that moment can serve more people. We just don't know. Now, I'm making these potentials up. Conceptually, I fully understand what the city council's concerned about, and I appreciate that. I will offer one further comment. There will possibly be some actions, to use a phrase most people are familiar with, where you can't unring a bell. It may be a one-time action to stem some type of act or omission that needs to be addressed right then and there, and it's addressed. An hour later or a week later when the council or committee meets, it becomes very difficult to say, now we have to undo that. Now, if it's a standing order that has more than momentary or short duration, yes, of course, that can be modified or repealed and all. And frankly, notwithstanding anything in this ordinance, because The council is being asked to approve it, and it cannot go into effect until you approve it, if you do. You always have the power to modify the temporary ordinance. As time goes on and we all gain more experience with how this thing's going to work, the council may come back, special meeting, regular meeting, however you choose to call it, and you can amend it. That is a policy question, depending on what the amendment is. But clearly, more likely than not, it's a policy question. My guess with all of this is the governor is kind of out ahead of an awful lot of people in this whole area, where he has been providing a lot of policy and executive orders regarding conduct, like the closing of restaurants and bars and food halls starting to, I believe it's tonight at 9 o'clock, for on-premises consumption and offering alternatives. Other states and other cities are doing the same thing and all. But I think he came out in advance of that, and our ordinance would give the mayor that power, but obviously at this point she doesn't need to exercise that power.
Just add one further comment, just to address your question, Bill, in that we don't ever expect to need to take any action as to this. It's a fail-safe, if you will. Yes, it certainly can be a situation where it was something that required immediate action and it's already over and done with, and there's nothing for us to do about it. But it's a fail-safe nonetheless, and I believe it was necessary to add that language to help folks understand that we're taking the power that we're vesting in the mayor and the city very seriously.
I'd like to make a comment.
Dennis?
And I think that somewhat this is there's kind of a difference between an event that might happen in the public that would require immediate attention, whether it be through the fire or the police department or some change in regulation. But we're probably not going to be doing proactively making up new regulations to initiate further change ourselves, but only with the consent of both the mayor and the city council.
Any other comments? Sharice?
I just want to say, because Jared and I had some conversation too over the weekend, but the one thing that I think that is important about putting this in place is we are really counting on our government, meaning the people of Urbana, to care about the city enough and care about each other enough that we won't ever have to put anything, we won't ever have to do anything drastic to make sure that everyone in this city is safe. And the main thing with having this temporary ordinance is for the safety of the citizens of Urbana. And so for their health and for the health of their families. So the governor has put a lot of things in place. As Jim said, we may never, there are powers and policies in this temporary ordinance that may never come to fruition. But because of how our governor has been so forward-thinking and open-minded, and where he sees the possibility of where this disease can go and what it can cause, but I think that it would be to our deficit if we didn't have something in place, at least, so that we can say, well, this is what we need to do to help keep our city safe. And I think that it's very important that everyone in this city, and anybody who's watching, listening to this, it's so important that you buy into how this is going, and that you understand We're not trying to cut anybody's rights off. We're not trying to do any of that. What we're trying to do is make sure that you live and make sure that your neighbor is healthy and make sure that, people in your family are healthy. That's one of the most important things that we can do as city government, is to keep our citizens safe.
And our other responsibility is to keep our employees safe and to keep government running and functioning and providing the core services that everybody depends on in this crisis. So we're all first responders, and that individual behavior determines the outcome of this thing. And then we absolutely, our top priority is to keep this city functioning for all of you. Any other comments? Jared?
Just for clarification of moving forward, Charlie, do you have, from Eric, with what he has and what we've said, do you have a clear idea of our intention?
Let me read what Eric has stated here. Eric, is it your intention that this replaces the second paragraph in the version provided by Councilman Miller?
I think we're including both.
No, my intention is that this would be the second paragraph, and then the wording from Jared.
Okay, so this gets inserted. Okay, this gets inserted.
Yeah,
Okay.
this gets inserted. Yeah, mine gets inserted.
Okay, so the language we've received from Eric is that any order undertaken by this article will require notice to be given to the city council prior to or at the time of any action being taken. For action to remain in force, it must be ratified by a majority vote of the city council at its subsequent regular meeting.
Sounds fine.
I think what would follow is just the word additionally. The city council shall have the authority by majority vote to suspend or amend any action taken under this article within 48 hours of notice, so on and so forth, through the language that remains in mind.
Jim wants to add, notwithstanding something.
No, I'm not going to stand, and I'm not going to withstand either. What I am going to suggest is where you reference the word article, in I think it's 2 places, you change that to section. There are no articles in this particular ordinance.
I meant to change that before I sent that out, but yes.
A section.
They are sections, not articles.
So the third paragraph about 4 council members being required, is that now deleted?
No, that would still remain.
So that's in
For the
there
call of the special, for a call of a special meeting.
instead of the regular meeting?
Correct.
So you want an option to have it either go to the next regular meeting, or if you're so horrified, you want to be able to call a special meeting?
That's correct.
Gotcha, okay. Okay. Do we have it, Charlie?
Yeah, okay, so the new third paragraph reads, additionally, the city council shall have the authority by a majority vote to suspend or amend any action under this section, taken under this section within 48 hours of notice being given of such action. And then the other two, is there another section in here, Jim?
Yeah, it's in the next sentence.
Special meeting to vote.
Vested in this section shall only require a declaration by 4 council members to the city clerk of the intention of the council.
Oh, okay, I see it. Okay, section, okay. I think so. Okay. So now, the next would be somebody to move and second this, and then discussion on the amendment.
I'll make
I've got
a
a question first.
Yeah, go.
Is there any way, just for clarity, you can, now that those on-the-fly amendments have been made, can you read it from the top to bottom so we know what we're voting on?
Sure. Section 13, other emergency powers. The mayor, pursuant to her general police powers to protect public health and safety within the city of Urbana, shall have the power and authority to issue general orders that have force and effect of law. Paragraph 2. Give me a second to pull it up. Any order undertaken by this article will require notice to be given to the city council prior to or at the time of any action being taken. For the action to remain in force, it must be ratified by majority vote of the city council at its subsequent regular meeting. Paragraph 3. Additionally, the city council shall have the authority by a majority vote to suspend or amend any action taken under this article under this section within 48 hours of notice being given of any such action. A special meeting to vote on any action taken under the powers vested in this section shall only require a declaration by 4 council members to the city clerk of the intention of the council to hold a vote. Fifth paragraph, a special meeting will be noticed and scheduled as soon as reasonably possible once notice has been given to the city clerk.
I'm going to make a motion that we amend Section 13 as stated.
I'll second.
It's moved by Jared, seconded by Mary Alice. Discussion.
Yeah, I guess Dennis Roberts here. So, yeah, I think it's appropriate to include the elected officials who represent the community in the availability to comment on or to modify any emergency declaration that has come into the community, mainly because it's the duty of aldermen to be responsive and to participate in the creation of the conditions that we're operating under. And while we're not taking away from the ability of the mayor to be proactive and quick responding to the time and place of a possible emergency, it's always good to have the ratification by the elected officials to either support or to question it as it proceeds.
Any other comments? All those in favor, Jared?
Just one more. We didn't discuss it, but just as to make it clear through our media sources and reporting as it happens on this, this is an additional check that is added into this ordinance. We didn't discuss it specifically, but this ordinance also has another check in that the city council at any time may vote to rescind the entire emergency ordinance. So we have one blanket check on the ordinance. We have just added an additional check on a specific action that could be taken under Section 13 in this ordinance. And just wanted that to be clear that we have 2 checks on the power vested in this ordinance given to the city council.
All those in favor, please say aye. And this is a vote on the amendment alone.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That passes. Further discussion.
So in addition to Section 13, we had looked at, Jared and I had spoken about Section 14, which is in the absence or incapacity of the mayor. Currently, the procedure, so that the public knows, if the mayor is indisposed or unavailable, then the mayor pro tem steps in and is in place, not in place, but is in the stead of the mayor, and then it goes to the wards in order of the wards. So we have 7 wards in Urbana. Based on this, I think it's appropriate that we follow this. This is Section 226 in the city code. I realize that we have, at the moment, let me step back for a second. In this ordinance, right now, the order is the mayor, and then it says the mayor may delegate such powers and authority to the city administrator or such other person as the mayor may delegate who may take actions, such actions as are provided in the temporary emergency ordinance. Similarly, in the absence or incapacity of the city administrator, such powers and authority shall devolve to the human resources and finance director. So I'd like to put up for discussion changing that language, removing everything after how the order would take place. I'd like to say first off that I really appreciate, I think the staff has done a fabulous job coming together, putting together plans. I know the fire department, the police department, everybody is working very hard to ensure the safety not only of our first responders, but also of our public. So this is in no way to say that our staff is incapable of this, but our staff will be in place, hopefully, as long as there isn't anything unforeseen. So this is more about who has the ability to move the city forward with all of the city staff. So the city administrator, the human resource and finance director, hopefully will still be in those positions. So I'm not trying to remove those people, but I would like to hear a conversation about keeping the order from Section 226 in the city code.
Bill?
Well, my understanding is if there was a temporary absence or incapacity, actually both would happen. So maybe I need clarification on that. Both the powers, especially in this order, would go to, as it says, to the city administrator or other such person as the mayor may delegate, but the mayoral powers or mayoral position would go to the mayor pro tem, because that's in our city code. If the mayor becomes incapacitated, then,
You are correct.
okay.
The reason it was written, I'll explain. The reason it was written this way, this situation is different than anyone has ever experienced. I mean, you've heard that over and over again. And we have we're 2 weeks into our planning, more than 2 weeks, but into our official NIMS. The people, the city administrator, the finance director have all been trained in this particular framework. It takes a long time to get up to speed. Given the amount of information that we have received in the past few weeks, I just felt it was very important for continuity of operations to have the people in this position going forward. But yes, of course, the mayor pro tem would be assuming duties. Jared.
Just a comment on that. So I thought about the context of it after you had responded to our inquiry about it, and it made me think of the president and vice president, if you will, in that our mayor pro tem is in some form or fashion our vice president. Bill, you're shaking your head that you wouldn't agree with that analogy.
Let's choose a different analogy.
Well, I'm just thinking, if the president is incapacitated or...
But pro tem is temporary. If there was a permanent incapacitation, you would appoint a new mayor from the council.
Okay. I guess. Okay, fair enough.
Necessarily have to be the mayor pro tem.
I got you. So that was my bad analogy. I guess it just came to mind that I thought that we should, at the very least, now that we're in this situation, I guess we even, 3 weeks ago didn't think we would be here today, that either through, a change in this section or just as principle as we move forward, that we need to ensure that we have an elected official who is on the level, who can assume duties. When you said there's so much catching up to do, there's so many things that that person is not going to be trained to be ready to respond to and talk about and learn about when they assume the position. Like, you're probably true, but that also means that all of the other elected officials are kind of kept out of the loop as far as what's going on behind the scenes. There isn't even one of us that would know necessarily what to do should the mayor lose the ability to be the mayor. And that is concerning. And I think that's something we need to reconsider as we're thinking about the role of the mayor pro tem in serving as the mayor pro tem, especially now that we've come to be in this situation, and not just as let's think about it when we rewrite the section of the city code somewhere down the line, but it probably needs action now that we have somebody getting trained up from an elected position in the city to be able to step in should something happen and be able to be the mayor pro tem and not just there to talk to reporters about what the city is doing without knowing what's really going on. Do you understand what I'm getting at? I'm not saying we need to change the language. I'm just saying we have no elected officials ready to step in.
I can assure you that, never mind.
So I can comment on that, perhaps, as the mayor pro tem. So I have made myself available by email and the conversation to the mayor to be at hand at any time to be briefed or to assist during this time of trial here in the city. And so far, the mayor felt that, well, perhaps she can address it, but she said that she would consider that or take that under consideration as she would try to understand what she wanted to accomplish next. So, but I would be willing and ready to come in as part of a team to do that, because it would probably be my responsibility in any case, as the mayor, if the mayor were to come down ill herself and to be in some way incapacitated or isolated, to help, and certainly I'm willing to do that. Or anybody who would be elected official, because it would also potentially devolve to, according to the ordinance that we have standing, which would be Section 2-26, that should the mayor pro tem also be incapacitated, the responsibility of the office temporarily would go to the aldermen of Ward 1, Ward 2, Ward 3 in succession, depending on who was available. And I think it is important to have an elected official at the very top or very close to the top of the decision-making process, because staff are not elected. They might be highly trained, but there needs to be a representation of the elected people here in the community, I think.
This is Eric, and I have a few different reactions to this clause, this section, and this discussion. My strongest reaction is, Diane, take care of yourself, please. We need you more than ever.
The rumors of my demise are greatly exaggerated tonight.
But then my second thought is, and I'm echoing Dennis here, the concern about moving this degree of responsibility from an elected person to an appointed person. Now, I actually just looked up the presidential succession. And so maybe all of you already know this. So, of course, it's the vice president. Then it's the Speaker of the House. Then it's the President pro tem of the Senate. And then it's cabinet officials, appointed officials, obviously. So, there's, now, of course, we've never gotten down that list. But I think that we have, we've just put an amendment to this that provides the council with the ability to, to approve, to advise and consent to the actions, to the emergency actions of the prime person. And I think I'm persuaded, on balance, despite my concerns about having an appointed person so high in the list of succession, I think I'm persuaded by the fact that we are in an emergency situation. Things may change very, very rapidly. We may have particular things happening if there's a tremendous surge in cases, for example, of COVID-19 in Champaign County. There's a whole lot of things that could happen really fast. And so I am inclined to support this section. I've gone back and forth on this. I know I've had conversations with Mary Alice about it. But on balance, I'm inclined, with the other safeguards we have, to support this section as it is written.
Any other comments? Mary Alice?
So the conversation between Bill Colbrick and Jared in regards to the previous amendment talked about, when does this apply? Section 13. So Section 13 are any other emergency powers. So I would be more inclined to support the existing language if we also put in language that the person needs to be approved by City Council at the next meeting. because that is the same that we said in Section 13, and that would give us the ability to have comment and the ability to affirm.
Mm-hmm.
Bill?
So, I mean, I'm thinking of situations, where it might be applied, and if it's a short absence where the mayor is out of town or something, somebody has to be in charge and can't wait around for a vote.
And recall the mayor pro tem will be signing anything that comes down.
This happens at the same time. So mayor pro tem would be the person that signs things, just like they are now when you go out of town. If it became incapacitated, then that sounds like more of a permanent thing. So then there's a different process. Then you'd have to replace the mayor, and there's a secession that has nothing to do with the secession that's listed as the pro tem secession. That's all just temporary stuff for temporary absences.
Well, I'm sorry.
Mary Alice, and then Eric.
So I guess my question is Section 14 at the moment designates the city administrator as the first in line to do this emergency order. So all the power for the emergency order that we are considering tonight would then go to the city administrator and not to the mayor pro tem,
Right.
because of Section 14. So I think it's important for us to have language in Section 14 if we're going to keep it existing here, that within a week that there is a vote at city council to affirm once again that the city administrator is given the power to do this emergency ordinance.
Bill?
I actually like the suggestion by Mary Alice. If we put something in Section 13 for advice and consent, oversight by the council, just for the sake of consistency, if there's something that is out of the ordinary that happens, to city personnel, I think, like I said, for the sake of consistency, being able to come back a week later at the next council meeting and just being able to give that advice and consent and either agree or disagree, just for consistency.
Would you propose someone have language for Charlie?
Oh, boy.
And the reason we're doing this is I'm going to sign this tonight after it's voted on. Because there are things we have to do tomorrow that's authorized in this.
I will ask the city clerk to assist me, but I will say Section 14, the first paragraph stays as is. The second paragraph would be the language that Eric inserted into Section 13. So the city clerk, would you be willing to state that again for us?
I think the relevant would be the second sentence of Eric's paragraph, which would say, for the action to remain in force, it must be ratified by a majority vote of the city council at its subsequent regular meeting.
So all we need to do is substitute the word action with appointment to
Yeah.
remain in
Yeah,
force.
for the
And,
or the
delegation.
for the delegation.
To remain in
Let me
force.
write that down. For the delegation to remain in force, it must be ratified by a majority vote of the city council at its subsequent Monday meeting.
Perfect.
So my only question after that is, if it is not ratified by the city council, what happens? Should we go back to Section 226? I guess I'm posing that as a question to council.
This is Eric. I think if the council doesn't ratify the delegation, then the responsibility falls to the council to replace it with something that works.
Well, fall back to your
And yes, to
Section
come back to
226. And this, just so the public understands, this is only for this particular situation.
right.
All right, so,
So when we rewrite the code, this could be completely different.
We'll have a larger conversation.
Yes, and under less stressful circumstances. Sharice?
So I just, for clarification, I just want to understand that we're going to keep the absence or incapacity, the section that's already been written. In addition, we're adding to ensure the continuity of chief executive position in the absence or incapacity of mayor, section 226 of the city code will be initiated. Correct?
No.
No.
Okay, so we're not adding,
No, that language is not being considered.
okay, so but what we are adding in is that the city council comes in and actually nullifies or ratifies the appointment that in the way that it's written now. Like, so if it's the city administrator that takes over, we can say yes or no, and if we say no, then we go to the mayor pro tem.
Well, it would be at our direction.
So we would determine if it would go to the mayor pro tem.
Yes.
Okay, that's what.
But in the meantime, the mayor pro tem is acting as the mayor pro tem.
And once again, has the city clerk, have you caught up yet? I know you're over there scribing very, very furiously.
Would you like to read?
Can I make a motion and then let him read?
Sure.
Thank you. I'd like to make an
I'm
amendment.
incapacitated at this point.
I'd like to make an amendment to Section 14, which discusses the absence or incapacity of the mayor. And I'll read the first part, and then the addition that we're adding to it is from the city clerk. So that in the absence or incapacity of the mayor may delegate such powers and authority to the city administrator or such other person as the mayor may delegate who may take such actions as are provided in this temporary emergency ordinance. Similarly, in the absence or incapacity of the city administrator, such powers and authority shall devolve to the Human Resources Finance Director. And then the second paragraph is?
For the delegation to remain in force, it must be ratified by a majority vote of the city council at its subsequent regular meeting.
So I move approval of that amendment.
I will second it.
Moved
You
by-
got it, Sharice.
Moved by Mary Alice, seconded by Jared. Any further discussion?
I think I'd just like to say that I think it's an appropriate addition because it allows the council to have a voice in who among potentially the elected officials assist in a significant way to help solve the issues of the day.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. That amendment passes. Is there a motion for the ordinance as a whole?
It's already on the floor.
It's on the floor?
It's already on the
Okay.
floor.
It was moved by Jared Miller, seconded by Councilman Colebrook.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Yeah.
Bill?
Since you mentioned it, can you give us a little idea what types of things you need to do right away?
Can we vote on this first?
Oh,
I shouldn't have asked that. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, as long as you do it during the meeting, that's fine, I don't care.
No, and you will be notified tomorrow when we do them. One would be related to city facilities. We're going to be starting tomorrow. We do have this is a polling place tomorrow. We're going to be locking 2 of the 3 outside entrances, so the public will be, and all of us will be coming in the north door. And that will be in place for, indefinitely, depending on, circumstances. It may be that we eventually get to the point where the building is locked, is closed to the public. But at this point, we're going to keep one door open. We're advising people to call in advance, try to do as much as they can online. And the purpose behind that is and we're also making sure all of our employees are positioned behind glass. So there's a physical barrier between them and the public and still doing public business. So there's the police service window, finance window, city clerk, and then we're working it out so CD is also protected in that way. What else is on the list? I'm going to be suspending issuing of special or public event permits for the foreseeable future to discourage any large gatherings in the city. I'm also going to be suspending issuing temporary liquor licenses related to those special events. So that'll go into effect right away. What else do we have? We're working on internally on travel policy, on scrambling to get our remote working capability up and running. Turns out there's no laptops available in the world, so we're going to Plan B on that. And is there anything else? Yeah, Carol.
Parking meters.
Parking meters. Parking meters will not be enforced in the parking lot north of the city.
They're still enforcing them on campus.
I was
got a ticket
going
today.
to do a yay for not on campus.
And
but-
we're also taking steps to accommodate the new reality for restaurants and bars, which we'll announce tomorrow, but it will involve bagging. They have restaurants would, or bars would have the choice of requesting meters to be bagged in front of their establishments for free, and then that could be their pickup and drop-off zone.
Just to be clear, it's two parking
Two
meters.
parking meters.
Per establishment.
Yes, yeah, not the whole street.
So
And-
there's, okay, so there's
and-
room for somebody to drive up and pick up some
Yes,
curb pickup?
safely.
That's great.
Yes, and this is thing, these are just things that we're going to put in place
Yeah.
tomorrow. So
Yeah, I know.
those are the types of things that people are going to see under this emergency ordinance. The Section 13 obviously would be a larger scale action that I don't know what it could be. There's a lot of stuff happening out there, but it would be designed to either promote the continuity of operations in the city, protect public safety, stop the spread of the virus. Depends, and a lot of that depends on the behavior also and the actions of every single resident in this community. So,
Thanks. I think it really demonstrates how we have to be flexible, and this will really help the flexibility. I know it's hard to keep up, but I think the sheriff has suspended evictions for a time period.
court-ordered evictions
Court-ordered
through the
evictions
end of the month.
till the end of
Yeah.
the month, and unemployment insurance, they've suspended the first week wait, so you don't have to wait to apply for unemployment insurance. We really have to watch out for our retail workers that are going to be affected, and people can start looking toward new jobs like delivery and other online options and stuff. So there's going to be a lot of changes in the economy if this continues a long time. So it's nice to have the flexibility. I'll support it.
We've also reached out to the Small Business Association, or Small Business Development Center and the Economic Development Corporation, and they're providing resources to the business community as well. So a lot of this we can't do, the city itself can't do, but we're trying to mobilize the resources in the community. But literally, it's nonstop. So appreciate your support for this, and we'll try to keep you as informed as we can, but sometimes it's not until the end of the day that I actually get a chance to sit down and write an email.
And Mayor, also we've learned now that the MTD has offered a response to the COVID virus. They're going to be offering free rides effective on Tuesday. They encourage all passengers to limit non-essential travel, and they recognize that there are people who must get to work and have errands to run. So they're trying to eliminate any barriers to access to free rides that and other information that would be on their website. So I think it's important to let people know that many other organizations and facilities within the community are also changing their patterns and trying to be cooperative as we face the challenges that we are looking at.
Well, the theme is we are in this together, and we have to get through this together, and we're going to learn a great deal from this experience. It will speed up a transition to many different things, like more online, or more virtual meetings and that sort of thing, and probably get our locks updated in our buildings. So we have a pass code, or a pass entry, rather than depending on physical keys. So We're going to move quickly.
Okay, I just have one comment that I want to make in the spirit of flexibility that Bill was talking about and we're all talking about. And this is the quote a pastor that I had. And he used to say, "Blessed are the flexible, for they will not be bent out of shape." So
I love that.
we need to keep that in mind while we're going through all of this, I think.
And don't make a straight line crooked.
There you
Okay,
go.
are we ready to vote? Mary Alice?
I have just one quick statement. I just wanted to say that I'm always impressed by the conversation that we have at City Council to try and make this the best ordinance that we possibly can. I think this is an excellent ordinance right now. It's an unfortunate ordinance. We don't want to be passing this, but it's a necessary one, so I am in support of it.
Thank you. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmembers Brown,
Yes.
Colebrook,
Yes.
Hersey,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Roberts, Dennis,
Also myself.
Dennis,
Hello?
Are you there, Dennis?
Yes, and I say yes also.
Okay,
and Wu.
Yes.
that motion passes. With no further business before this meeting, it is adjourned, and it will be followed by the City Council Committee of the Whole meeting, chaired by Jared Miller.
We'll take 2 minutes.
And at some point, I'll be stepping away to sign this emergency order. Thank you very much.
Council members, we're going to go ahead and get going. All right, so up next is our Committee of the Whole meeting for Monday, March 16th. With the clerk, I'm going to call the meeting to order and ask the clerk to call the roll.
Council members Brown,
Here.
Colbrook,
Here.
Hersey,
Here.
Jacobson,
Here.
Miller,
Here?
Roberts,
Here.
Wu,
Here.
All right. First up, we have approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. This was on March 2nd, 2020. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
That was moved by Mary Alice and seconded by Alderman Bill Brown. Are there any additions, or I'm sorry, are there any corrections or amendments? All those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. All right, that motion passes. The minutes are approved. Are there any additions to the agenda this evening? Seeing none. Public input. I don't have any cards in front of me. We were asking folks not to turn cards in if they did not, only if they wish to address the council, but not by voice. Is there anyone who wishes by voice to address the council in the audience this evening? Seeing none, we did have an update from Tim Bannon, but that has been rescheduled for another date. Are there any staff reports?
Could I just make a quick update?
Yeah, of course.
I do want to just take the opportunity before I give the quick update to say how just phenomenal all of our staff are being. They're seeing their friends and family members, being sent home for various reasons. Some of them will not be paid because there's no work for them, and other ones are being sent home because they, their places of business are allowing remote work. We're not set up for remote work. As the mayor said, we're trying to catch up on that front. But, we've had a wonderful commitment of people coming to the office and practicing all the good practices so that we can keep things going. And I just want to give a shout out to our staff because they're really stepping up and being, we're proud of them. They're wonderful. Just want to give you a couple updates. Was there clapping? There was. Yes. Thank you. We gave an update. I gave an update a week or two ago about bid openings for several transportation projects. Those are still on schedule. We've shifted to a virtual format because we typically invite people in for that, but that'll allow us to keep on schedule. And then the other thing I wanted to announce is that IDOT has started work on University Avenue, and the speed limit on University Avenue was scheduled to be lowered to 30 miles an hour after the construction was done, but IDOT, especially given the fact that construction would be ongoing, they have changed the speed limit starting today, so that happened before the project really got under construction, and it won't wait then, and then it will continue as a permanent change. So just those few updates.
Thank you, Carol. Any other staff reports or updates? All right. First up, we have ordinance number 2020-03-009, an ordinance authorizing the purchase of certain real estate, specifically 1107, thank you, North Gregory Street. Community Development.
Thank you. So this is a request to purchase a single-family house at 1107 North Gregory for continued use for transitional housing. So Rosecrans has operated it for transitional housing. It's been operated since 2013 for transitional housing. But Rosecrans now would like to focus on some of their other services and would like to return this property to the city. If we purchase it for the $0, as is in the ordinance, we will continue to operate it for transitional housing, just like we do 2 other units in the city. So it's imperative that affordability of this property remains. If it does not remain affordable per HUD definitions, the city will need to return to HUD $200,000. The best way to guarantee affordability is to own the property. So we are asking that we buy this back for $0, and the CD Commission at their February meeting has recommended that we do so.
Thank you, Lori. Are there any questions for staff from council? Mary Alice?
I'd like to move to City Council with recommendation for approval. Ordinance number 2020-03009, an ordinance authorizing the purchase of certain real estate at 1107 North Gregory Street, with a recommendation for approval to City Council.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Mary Alice, seconded by Sharice. Are there any further discussion from council? I just had one quick question, Lori. I did not know, and I kind of assumed when reading this that we operated transitional housing as a government body. Is that correct?
We have 2 units. One's on Wiley and one's on Division.
Interesting.
So this would be our third.
So this, who oversees that program?
Community Development, our grants division, with assistance from our code compliance inspector.
Interesting. I'd love to hear more about it sometime.
We'll set up a virtual meeting to discuss that.
Thanks. All right. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. All right, that ordinance passes. Next up, we have ordinance number 2020-03-014, an ordinance approving an amendment to a planned unit development at 1208 Bradley Avenue. Plan case number 2396, PUD 20. Lily Wilcox. How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Very well.
Good evening, everybody. I promise to wipe that down afterwards. So I wanted to, before we get started, let you know that the petitioner is on the phone tonight for questions. Lori Edwards from the Annex Group, representing Union Development Holdings, LLC, and Brian Bradshaw from BKB Engineering in Champaign, the site engineer for the Phase 2 proposed development, are both on the phone, or I'm hoping they are still on the phone.
Yes, we're here.
Thank you, Lori Edwards.
Yeah, I'm here.
Thank you, Brian Bradshaw. To get started, the requester asks to build a by right affordable housing development on a vacant lot to the west of the One North apartment complex along Bradley Avenue. As the parcel is currently part of a PUD, without an amendment, any new development would be required to generally conform to the site plan of the Melrose Apartments of Urbana PUD from 1996. The Plan Commission held a public hearing on the PUD amendment request at its March 5th, 2020 meeting. The Commission voted unanimously, 6-0, to recommend approval of the request to exclude the 14.51 acres from the original PUD, which would allow development of the site that meets all requirements of the R4 medium-density multifamily residential zoning district. A little bit of background about the site. The 1982 comprehensive plan includes future aspirations for the North Lincoln Avenue area to be developed as a commercial corridor. By the mid-1990s, the corridor had several hotels, a new gas station, and a retail developments. In 1996, Intergroup Incorporated applied to the city for a comprehensive plan amendment, zoning map amendment, special use permit for a planned unit development, and development agreement for the land that today includes One North, Capstone Quarters, and the vacant 14.51 acres at 1208 Bradley Avenue. That was supposed to be Phase 2 of the what is now One North development. One North was the only part of the original planned unit development that was constructed. Phase 2 property has remained undeveloped since the Melrose PUD was approved 24 years ago. And to clarify, the subject property is 1208 Bradley. It says proposed development on your screen. And they request to amend the existing PUD to only encompass the One North property. So this is the proposed amendment to the existing PUD. And that would allow for a by right development next door on the property at 1208. The Plan Commission, the Plan Commission held a public hearing on the request at its March 5th, 2020 meeting. The Plan Commission had a concern that amending the PUD would create a new property line and that the existing buildings on the One North site may be too close to the new property line to meet separation requirements in building code. The Plan Commission asked staff to research this potential issue prior to City Council hearing. Building Safety has reviewed the plans and PUD amendment request and has determined that no issues would be created for the existing buildings on the One North site if the requested amendment is approved. The existing buildings have sprinklers and are at least 20 feet from the new property line. Since the minimum required side yard in the R4 district is 5 feet, any new buildings on the Phase 2 site would be at least 25 feet from the existing buildings, which meets the requirements for building separation. No members of the public spoke in favor of or opposed to the request. And just to clarify, that was if a building burnt down, the buildings are not considered non-conforming to building safety and fire separation. Due to the relatively large size of the Phase 2 property in relation to the whole planned unit development, allowing it to be developed as a proposed is too significant a change to be considered minor. So that's why we're here today and at Plan Commission to discuss a major amendment to the planned unit development. Overall, the plans are quite similar and would develop the site at around the same level of intensity. The proposed development would meet zoning requirements for the underlying R4 zoning district, and the ownership for the Phase 1, One North, and Phase 2 parcels would be separate entities. There is no reason to amend the existing PUD to include the proposed site plan. Amending the PUD to exclude Phase 2 will not affect Phase 1, which is One North, in any way. Phase 1 is currently compliant with the zoning ordinance and will remain so if the amendment is approved. A bit about site connectivity. Prior to the 1982 comprehensive plan, so the last amendment was 1978, Urbana had envisioned Goodwin Avenue extending north past Bradley Avenue to Kenyon Avenue. In 1969, the city of Urbana acquired right-of-way from Lenore Tawney with the intent of building a road at that time of development in the area. By the time the 1982 comprehensive plan was adopted, those plans had been abandoned. The city held the right-of-way until 1996 when Intergroup proposed a student housing complex on the Melrose PUD site, which required various approvals and a development agreement. The development agreement included that the city would abandon the Goodwin Avenue right-of-way and that Intergroup would pay a fee to the city to use the city-owned stormwater detention basin that serves the area. The right-of-way was returned to Ms. Tawney, who sold it to Intergroup. Extending Goodwin Avenue through the site to Kenyon Road is also not feasible because in 1987, the city built a ditch and culvert on the city-owned right-of-way north of the site, which serves as an important function of stormwater management. The approved site plan for the Melrose PUD shows no connections for Phase 2 site to Bradley Avenue to the south or to Federal Drive to the north, which is Exhibit F in the staff report. Phase 2 was planned to only connect to Phase 1 to the east. If the PUD is amended and Phase 2 site is developed, any new development will most likely connect to Bradley Avenue and would preferably connect to Federal Drive as well. The proposed development from the Annex Group would connect both Bradley Avenue and Federal Drive and would be a by right development which would meet all requirements of the zoning ordinance, which is, you can see in Exhibit E. And please note the proposed development plans are preliminary and are provided for informational purposes. As far as relating to the comprehensive plan, this proposed development, it meets Goal 40, making affordable housing available for low-income and moderate-income households. Goal 41, promote access to employment opportunities for all Urbana residents, and that this development generally meets the goals and objectives of the 2005 comprehensive plan. Goal 40 and Goal 41 relate to the proposed amendment, and I'm going to just read a little bit about the affordable housing. It was in the Plan Commission packet, but I would like to expand a little bit on that. The applicant is seeking funding for this project from Urbana allocated home funds and State of Illinois Housing Development Authority this spring. Home funds come from the Housing and Urban Development Program that seeks to address local housing needs. Urbana, Champaign, and Champaign County form the Home Consortium and receive funding each year through the Home Program. New construction of housing is one objective of the Home Program, and this project would help meet that objective. Additionally, the state of Illinois administers a tax credit program for affordable housing creation. The applicant plans to submit an application to IDA for this project for a non-competitive 4% tax credit program, LIHTC, that funds the creation or renovation of affordable housing units. Though the site is preliminary, the project appears to respect the Urbana zoning ordinance and has additional amenities such as a shared use path through the site. The site is proposed as 220 units. Illinois Housing Development Authority has approved this site as a preliminary project assessment, and you can access that through their website online. In Section 3, Section 13.3, it lists criteria for creation of planned unit developments. No criteria is given to explicitly address the removal of land from an existing planned unit development, as is this case. The staff report addresses that criteria for approval of a planned unit development. I'm going to skip and read the summary of findings, which really addresses that. The first of the summary of findings, Union Development Holdings, LLC requests an amendment to the Melrose Apartments of Urbana planned unit development for the property at 1208 Bradley Avenue. The applicant requests to exclude this property from the existing PUD and develop the property to R4 medium-density multiple family residential zoning district. The property is undeveloped and 14.51 acres in size, or 37% of the existing PUD. At its March 5th, 2020 meeting, the Plan Commission voted unanimously to recommend approval to the City Council of the amendment to the Melrose Apartments of Urbana planned unit development. The applicant will be asking for funding from the State of Illinois' Department of Housing Development Authority, and City of Urbana will consider it for a home program to construct affordable apartments on the site. The subject property is suitable for medium-density residential uses, like the proposed R4 medium-density multiple family residential zoning district. The exclusion of this property from the existing PUD and development to the underlying zoning district is conducive and convenient to the public. Additionally, the request to develop the property to R4 medium-density multifamily residential zoning district would allow the owner to build. This would be generally compatible with the multifamily residential future land use designation of the 2005 Urbana Comprehensive Plan. The existing PUD is consistent with the purpose and goals of Section 13-3, and the proposed exclusion of the subject property does not affect the existing PUD. City Council has the following options in Plan Case 2396-PUD 20. This is the original. First option, approve the ordinance approving the planned unit development amendment. Second, approve the ordinance approving the planned unit development amendment with conditions. And 3, deny the ordinance approving the planned unit development amendment. The recommendation. At its March 5th, 2020 meeting, the Plan Commission voted unanimously, 6 ayes and 0 nays, to forward the amendment to the Melrose Apartments of Urbana planned unit development to City Council with a recommendation to approve the amendment. Staff likewise recommends approval.
Thank you, Lily. Are there questions? Mary Alice?
Lily, that was an excellent report because you answered every single one of my questions. Thank you. I have one pending question that I couldn't quite follow in the Planning Commission's discussion. So the original property that was in the PUD, how many lots was that originally? Was it 2? Or 2 property lines?
That's tricky. I believe it was 1 property. It's tricky because immediately following after that long list of cases, later that year there was a major subdivision that was approved. So then that created the 3 lots. And do note that that lot line right here, as you can kind of see on your screen, doesn't exactly line up with Goodwin Avenue down here, which on a almost 40-acre parcel like this is kind of hard to see, but you can kind of see it when you're standing at the site.
So in general, if you have a PUD, which means you're putting together several lots to build a structure that might not be in conformity with our existing rules, but you give something in return, right? If you break apart a piece like this, does that automatically create a property line? I'm just, that piece is a little ambiguous to me.
Yeah, so a planned unit development can encompass multiple property lines. And then the property owner may be foreseeing potential feasibility issues with their original plan, I don't know. But a property owner could then subdivide it but still be under the existing approved planned unit development.
So this is similar to a subdivision?
It was a subdivision afterwards.
Okay, thank you.
Bill Brown.
So with the PUD, they didn't complete it as originally designed. Usually when we pass a PUD, there's a clause in there that says must be built in conformance with the design submitted or something like that. And it looks like we at least provided some kind of drainage or stormwater retention in exchange for some payment. I don't know how much that was, but it's possible that as part of that PUD give and take, we gave them a pretty low rate or took a hit on providing that drainage. So we gave up something in exchange for giving them for them to develop, and then we also gave them the right-of-way. I mean, my concern, I wrote to you after the Plan Commission meeting. I think during the Plan Commission meeting, the site connectivity was either not there or a lot shorter, right?
Oh, the discussion?
Well, the paragraph, because...
Absolutely.
Yeah,
it wasn't there.
It wasn't there. I really appreciate you adding that, and I think it would be good to kind of add something like that in any big case, or any case where there's connectivity issues. I think it should be a kind of a separate study. But if you actually look at the Exhibit A, I think shows a better overview of the connectivity. Can you bring that up? Yeah, that's fine. So Goodwin goes up to Bradley, and I've tried to go from campus, say, to the water company on Federal Drive on my bicycle, and I ended up riding across the field. And you can do that because you have a mountain bike or whatever, and you're a mountain biker. But on my bike, it wasn't very much fun. And if you go to Lincoln Avenue, there's these little 2 or 3 foot wide sidewalks. And I'm not going to ride on Lincoln Avenue unless I absolutely have to, and I do sometimes in that area. That's the only place really where I ride on Lincoln Avenue. So connectivity there is just horrible. And if you live in this neighborhood in Beardsley Avenue, Eureka Street, King Park, and you want to go to, or say you work at the Holiday Inn, you have to walk clear over to Lincoln and up, and it's not a pleasant walk. Or if you work, in some of the industrial area, I guess there's also a proposed potential craft grower going to be up there or something to employ some people. It's just you either have to go a quarter mile one way or half a mile the other way. There's no connectivity up there. So I was hoping that we could somehow get that right-of-way back or get an easement for at least, at a minimum, a bicycle or walking path that if we can't afford it now, maybe it's something we could apply for a grant for because it definitely would improve connectivity. I was hoping also that if we could actually someday build the good one clear up to the access drive, that it would provide a nice route for MTD to actually make a loop there, so they could go do a clockwise loop, and the people where the main population is at 1 North, 1 South, Melrose Place, that now have to cross the street at Lincoln Avenue, on Lincoln Avenue where there's no crosswalks when they get off the bus, would be able to always get off on the right side and not have to cross the street. So
I was going to suggest that same kind of thing, that they extend Goodwin as far as possible because of the fact that that's a street, I believe too, and this is in my ward, that has to have it needs to go through. It needs to be extended. And if there's any way that that can happen, and call it Goodwin, don't change it to some nice little cute name that you have to drive up into the projects. I don't know if that's what it's going to be, but hello. So that I think I agree with Bill with that. I think that it definitely there needs to be a road that goes all the way through, because I watch those students and I pray for them every time I see them crossing Lincoln Avenue when the MTD lets them off. And this would be an excellent alternative to that. So
I'm not sure how we get there. And I know from their design that part, the design, I think I said in an email to you, I kind of take with a grain of salt, because this would give them a by right development. And we can see how the original PUD changed a couple of times before it was built. And their design, there it is, thanks. Their design that, at least they've submitted doesn't seem to use that stretch much. So if that was what was built, at least that would leave some potential option in the future, maybe to put something through there. And I also see that you've drawn in the yellow path, which would be a potential connectivity for a bicycle path, say up to Federal Drive, which wouldn't be quite as good as going more toward the hotel side. But it would be a big difference. But then that would be, if we made that actually a bike route, that would be the only private part of a bike route in our bike plan. All of our bike plan routes and everything are on public streets or public ways. And we wouldn't have any control over it, if they wanted to change that or something. So I guess I just wanted to know how much you've explored that option, and are there ways that we could put in an easement? I know that northern part is being used for drainage. It would be pretty expensive maybe to build a road there, although we have lots of roads with big drainage tiles under them. And if you didn't want to actually build a road and just make it a multi-use path, or like I suggested, maybe a multi-use / transit path, that would, if we could somehow allow for that in the future. I wonder, if you guys have explored that and what your thoughts on it are.
I'm really glad you asked, because transportation issues are very near and dear to all of planning staff's heart, as well as many of rest of staff, of course. So if you don't mind, I have like a little prepared, because there's a lot going on there. So I'm going to try to unpack that very, very briefly as I can, about Goodwin Avenue. So as you can see, Melrose re-subdivided off the Capstone Quarters parcel and the Phase 2 parcel, and they didn't really keep a whole lot of, they moved the property line to better facilitate their built structures on the Phase 2 site. If Goodwin Avenue proceeded through the site, the city-owned right-of-way to the north, it houses important stormwater infrastructure in the area. This project was a part of a lot. Basically, that stormwater infrastructure, it could be moved to underneath the road. It would be very expensive and very costly. And Shannon Baranek from Public Works is here to address some of those cost questions about roads. Staff has met with MTD, and I'm going to just briefly paraphrase. Buses, of course, cannot be expected to drive down a private access to parking. MTD has met with us as staff, and if the development had a public road rather than access to parking running through the site as it's currently proposed, they would not want to route buses through the site. They are being told right now through their own strategic planning process that they need to go more to arterial road routes. Those staff and MTD are very concerned about the safety of people getting off of Lincoln Avenue, trying to cross Lincoln Avenue to get to one north and one south. And there is in the plan to be a safety study to hopefully brainstorm and design some kind of solution to this. But Bradley Avenue has a couple of other problems with it. It has a surface conflict with Canadian National Railroad. So currently, MTD does not use Bradley Avenue and likes to stay away from it. It does have a bus route going up Bromine. Would be interested in Goodwin, as it would bring it closer to arterial and bring it, but they would still, the Lincoln Avenue along 1 North would still be routed the same way as it currently stands. In a perfect world, if money was not an object and Goodwin could be extended through that site, there would be other issues. But they did say that they could maybe possibly make that loop in a perfect world. Building a road is very cost prohibitive, as we all know. If grants, so as I mentioned earlier, Grants Division is considering this as a possible application for home funds because it's creating affordable housing units. And in that process, there is some ability to talk about that. And that is maybe where a really reasonable ask could be the access or an easement for the shared use path. That's something that I've discussed with the applicant. The applicant can talk further about to give them possibly infrastructure costs. And again, these are just thinking about this issue. Infrastructure costs could go for a public road, and if that was the case, if grants gave them a lot of federal dollars, there could be a lot of other hidden costs that are attached to that. So federal dollars comes with federal grant strings attached. And so that would, just to oversimplify that problem, it would be like giving the project $10 and then all of a sudden construction costs are $30. And so that would be very difficult. On the other hand, and this is really just exploring this issue, if the city gave general fund dollars to the project to see a road built, either as Goodwin Extended or as Federal Drive, all parking would have to be relocated off of this access area, forcing more of the site to be paved parking with no additional affordable housing units being created. The natural space in the center would likely have to be reconfigured as building space or parking spaces. And the amount of money needed to build a road through the site is unknown. I can't speak to that. Again, Shannon might be able to answer more questions, but is likely to be expensive. So we have talked a lot about it.
I appreciate all the reasons you've given for saying no. Did you think of any reasons, any ways to do it? I mean, you guys are the ones who are supposed to come up with the solutions. I'm not trying to be, too argumentative. I'm just saying, I hear a lot of, this is why we can't do it. I've proposed a couple things that, maybe didn't work. Did you come up with anything that might work?
So I've only explored the possibility of general fund dollars or possibility of grants, infrastructure dollars. There's certainly, I can, keep looking and exploring other options as well.
I appreciate that. I know you're on my side too. It's just really frustrating, that, and I think there were, probably mistakes made in the past and things given up that probably shouldn't have been given up, but they were expecting a big return and it didn't come back quite as big as they were expecting. But this is a, an opportunity that's going to be lost for forever, possibly.
Never say never, Bill. Other questions for Lily? Mary Alice?
Actually, I had a question for the developer. I was wondering if you could give us a rough estimate of how much your units would cost for somebody to rent there, since this is affordable housing?
Yes, this is Lori Edwards. Can everyone hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, great. Right now, our rents, these are going to be largely 1 and 2 bedrooms with some 3s and 4s, and rents would be roughly $770 for a 1-bedroom, and then up to the 4-bedroom around $1,100. This largely serves household incomes at 60% AMI, as designated by HUD county rent limits that come out annually, and 60% AMI, as some of you may know or may not, is roughly $52,000, I believe, is the max that it would serve. So we typically are looking to serve households from that would be for a family of 4, So a one-person household might be a $30,000 income. So roughly the $30,000 to $55,000 income is what we're targeting to serve.
Thank you.
Sure.
Sharice?
Yes, I have to leave early. So what
Okay.
I am going to ask is that I would like to make a motion to table this and keep it in committee until I can participate further regarding the discussion, because we are kind of having a lively discussion. So I'd like to make a motion to keep this particular resolution. what
It's
is
an
it?
ordinance.
Ordinance. I don't have the agenda in front of me. In committee until next committee meeting.
All right, I'll ask for a second.
I'll second that.
All right, there's a second from Bill. Any discussion in council about the move to keep it in committee? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. All right, this item will be held for the next committee of the whole meeting. All right, next up, we have resolution number 2020-03-015R, a resolution adopting financial policies. Elizabeth Hannon. I believe we've got VERF and fund balance. Eric and Dennis, are you both still with us?
I am with you.
Okay.
Dennis.
Thanks for checking in.
So actually, Don Ho was going to be here to do this tonight, but he couldn't be here. And so what he did was he put the presentation together. I'm going to play it for you.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
It'll be just like we were on Zoom.
Good evening. My name is Don Ho. I'm the Senior Financial Analyst for the Finance Department. I'm sorry I can't be there tonight. I'm not feeling 100%. And with the whole coronavirus outbreak thing, it would be better for me to stay home. So thank you for your understanding. So before you tonight is the proposed changes to the financial policies. So when we did the financial forecast in January, we mentioned that we would present some changes to the current financial policies before we adopt the budget. So here they are. So there are two sections we would like to revise in the financial policies. The first one is related to the VERF funding, and the second one is related to the general fund reserve. So here are some background on the VERF. So the VERF collects fees from other funds to make sure that we have adequate funds available to purchase equipment and vehicles. So the total value of all of our capital assets in the VERF is about $13.5 million. Our current practice. So our current practice is to set aside funds in advance of assets replacement. So rather than pre-funding at 100% of the replacement cost, the city current policy is to fund at 90% of the replacement cost. And this is very common among municipalities. Also, that the city currently has no minimum fund balance requirement for the VERF. So we created a projection with 3 different funding scenarios, and on top of that we also added a proposed minimum fund balance requirement for the VERF, which is at 10% of the total assets value. So as you can see, at the 90% level of funding, which is the blue line here, fund balance for the VERF remains about $2 million over the proposed minimum fund balance requirement for the majority of the forecast period. It is a good thing. However, it means that we would take more money than necessary out of the general fund. since the majority of the transfer come out of the general fund. At the 80% level of funding, which is a gray line here, fund balance for the VERF will be below the proposed minimum fund balance requirement from fiscal year 38 to 41. So it is not a feasible option unless we don't have a minimum fund balance requirement. And then at the 85% level of funding, fund balance for the VERF stays above the proposed minimum fund balance requirement for the whole forecast period. In fiscal year 2038, that's when we have a lot of equipment and vehicles scheduled for replacement, and that's why you see the big drop there. But even then, it's still above the minimum fund balance requirements, so that's very positive. So staff recommends adding language specifying a minimum fund balance requirements of at least 10% of the value of assets. Then this will provide some cushions against any price fluctuations in the future. And staff found that the 85% funding level would not only allow the VERF to be sustainable without issuing debt, but also will provide some relief on the general fund. The savings is about $80,000 in fiscal year 21. So the next section that I would like to talk about is the general fund reserve. And so, as you know, general fund reserve is the cornerstone of our financial flexibility, because with this money, it gives us options to respond to unexpected events such as natural disasters, changes in legislations, or diseases like coronavirus, like what we're experiencing now. So our current practice is we have our reserve set at least 15% of recurrent expenditures, and then it can only be depleted below 10% only in the event of catastrophic need. And if it dips below 15%, the finance director will recommend a strategy for replenishment. So we follow the Government Finance Officer Association, or GFOA, risk analysis guidelines. And based on this analysis, we found 3 primary risks. The first one is sales tax revenue. The city is currently dependent a lot on sales tax revenue. It is about 30% of our total revenue in the general fund. The second one is the potential for the city's infrastructure to fail, and as you know, we have a backlog of capital needs, and that is also considered a risk. The third one is the dependency of other funds on the city's general fund. And so the city's general fund supports other funds such as the capital improvement fund and retained risk funds and some other funds, and this is also considered a risk. We also compared the minimum fund balance requirements to different cities in Illinois, and it is in the memo. The table is in the memo. As you can see, there is really no defined requirement for each city, and that makes it hard to determine. But the general rule is that governments that maintain a higher reserves are better positioned to deal with funding issues in bad times. So since we have a a good budget year, then I think it is prudent for us to use a portion of a budget surpluses to help create and sustain or increase the size of our general fund reserve. And I just want to stress this, but putting money into reserve is a more fiscally prudent action than spending surplus funds on new or expanded programs. So staff recommends increasing the minimum fund balance from at least 15% to at least 20%, and that the reserve will be depleted below 15% instead of 10% in the event of catastrophic need. And the last one is that if the reserve dips below 20% instead of 15%, the finance director will recommend a strategy of replenishment over a period of no more than 3 to 5 years. Elizabeth will be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thanks,
Thank you, Don. That was great.
Elizabeth, do you have any other further comments before we take questions?
One thing I wanted to mention, since we are in the midst of responding to an emergency here, is that we're recommending increasing the fund balance to a minimum of 20%, and I know the timing seems odd. Depending on what happens here, we may not be able to achieve that next year. I think there's just a lot that's unknown now, but I think it still makes sense to adopt that as our policy. And if we're not able to achieve that in next year's budget, we'll point that out as a variance from council policy. I think it makes sense regardless in the long term.
Okay. Bill Colbert.
I've just got one question. On page 404, it says if the reserve dips below 20%, the finance director will recommend a strategy to replenish the reserve over a period of no more than 3 to 5 years. Could you give me some examples of what those strategies would be?
It could be something like controlling our level of expenditures over a period of time so that we can build reserves where we might otherwise be able to grow our expenditures or add new programs and services.
Mary Alice.
So I think VERF is like our favorite topic when it comes to finance. Every year we revisit this. So last year, I believe, we also talked about VERF, and I'm wondering if you can tell me, I didn't look up the different changes. So what's the difference from last year to this year?
So last year we were asking to go to a 70% funding level, which would have required us to issue debt periodically to smooth out the valleys when the fund balance got too low. So this year, the 85% funding level that we're recommending would not require us to issue any debt.
So essentially, we're saving more money than spending more money. If we're going up, if 85% is basically in reserves, right? So VERF is used so that we have the money to purchase the bigger items down the line. I just call it like the deep savings, so we have enough money. So we're actually saying we're going to save more money than we did last year.
Yeah, we'll set aside more money into the VERF to pay for future equipment purchases. Correct.
Okay. So, and then there's just two things that this is asking us to do. The first one is to increase from 15% to 20% of reoccurring charges in the general fund. And the second one is to increase from 70% to 85% for the VERF. I just want to confirm those are the two things we're being asked to do.
That's it.
Thank you.
And establish a minimum fund balance for the VERF, which we do not have.
Yes. So 3 things.
3 things.
3 things.
So I have a question.
Go ahead, Eric.
No, is it Dennis?
I'm sorry, Dennis.
I also have a question.
I'm just sort of curious, as I look at the proposed or projected VERF balance as it progresses from 2020 onward into the future, in the year 2038, it suddenly dives. And I'm wondering how that is projected to take such a downturn in something that's 18 years away.
So this is the
I
result.
would have expected that maybe we would be diving, next year. But it's kind of interesting. Is there a reason that the graph is like dipping so low in 2038 that you would expect it to be so low?
So it just has to do with the timing of purchases. We have every piece of equipment that's included in the VERF scheduled out and projected out. And so there are times, for example, perhaps when we have to replace a very expensive piece of equipment like a ladder truck that costs about currently $1.25 million. And so very large purchases have that kind of impact, but also if just in terms of the timing, a number of purchases fall kind of on the same schedule, that could do that as well.
I see. So it's something that's known, and you're trying to show that we are going to have one cataclysmic spending experience to replace needed equipment.
I would not describe it as cataclysmic if it's planned.
Well, there you go. That's putting it a positive spin.
Eric.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think there are reasonable projections that are darker than many people have suggested, that we're going to have to, keep this social isolation policy, including having bars and restaurants closed, until there's a vaccine, which is a year away. So let's suppose that hypothesis is true. How big a hole is that going to put in our budget?
So, certainly we're probably closer to the worst case scenario that we looked in the financial forecast if that happens. But, I'm not going to put a number on it because there's a lot that's unknown at this point. But certainly it's going to have an impact.
Okay.
Further questions for Elizabeth? Diane, do you have something?
Not a question. I can't resist this comment, though, is we're in much better position to weather this emergency now than we would have been 3 years ago. So, and that's due to your decisions and support for these policies. So, and you, thank you.
Okay. You're very welcome.
Elizabeth,
Thanks for your leadership, yeah.
Go ahead, Eric.
No, I was just going to respond to the mayor. You're very welcome, and thank you for your leadership.
She says you're welcome. Elizabeth, I had one in particular question. At the end of Don's presentation, and it's kind of put into the changes, is the reserve will be depleted below 15% only in the event of a catastrophic need. Are we, I know we're changing practices and it's possibly too early to even know, but is there any indications that we're going to anticipate catastrophic need in the near future? We're going to have to pull money out of the general fund to pay for something that's not coming in anymore. Do you know what actions the governor has been taking that might be affecting revenues coming from the state, anything like that?
So right now, based on what I know, the issue is more that we're going to lose revenue as businesses are shut down. We'll probably have some additional expenses, but at this point, I can't think of any they're going to be probably as large as the revenue loss.
Gotcha. Okay. Any other questions for Elizabeth? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Yeah, I can do that.
Go ahead, Dennis.
I make a motion that we pass resolution number 2020-03-015R, a resolution adopting a financial policies for the financial year 2020 and beyond, with recommendation of approval going to City Council.
Gotcha.
Second.
All right, that's a motion from Dennis and a second from Bill Brown. Is there any discussion amongst council members? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. And that motion passes. All right, seeing no further business, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Okay, thank you.